On this one, MotoGP Valencia this weekend. Dani Pedrosa retires. We analyze his career. JD Beach goes flat tracking, and we chat with him and a surprise guest. All that and so much more right now. Hey everyone, welcome to the Greg's Garage Pod with Jason and Greg. And my name is Greg White, and joining me from Smoky, California, Jason Pridmore. What's up, Jason?
Hey, good morning, Greg. How are you today?
I'm good, man. Now, it's Wednesday, but I still have to ask, how was the weekend?
Weekend was good. It was busy for me as usual. We had some fires crop up here at the end of last week that were pretty much within all my area. It's been a rough 12 months out here in California for the fires, especially in like Ventura area, but otherwise, it was good. I went out to Chuckwalla and did a bunch of one-on-ones and got to ride, so that's never a bad thing.
I heard Rispoli was back in town, an old British Superbike rider, James Rispoli.
Good old James. Yeah, he's back, and he flew in and then went straight back over to England, and he's working on some things, obviously, for next year. But, yeah, it's always good having him around, and he helps me out there. So he's already back in freezing cold England, though, so I don't think he's very happy about that.
Well, if you're joining us for the first time here on Greg's Garage Pod with Jason and Greg, we're just talking motorcycle stuff, especially motorcycle racing. We still have road racing going on, MotoGP. We have World Superbike testing going on. MotoAmerica is a hot topic. All kinds of great stuff to talk about on this one, huh, guy?
Yeah, we got so many things to think about and talk about. Last MotoGP race of the year this weekend, Greg. I think that when you start talking about Valencia over the years, it almost gets as much hype as the first one of the year in Doha. And what do you think we can expect this weekend? What's your big storyline, or you feel like you could take something away from this Valencia race in the last round of 2018?
Man, that's a really good question, because is there one big storyline, Jay? I mean, I'm looking at a couple of them. I think Suzuki could be a story. I think Marquez, who hasn't won a lot at Valencia, definitely could be a story. Last year's race winner, Dani Pedrosa, who we'll talk about later, he hasn't won a race all year, and he won Valencia last year. Could he, make it another winning year or a year with I mean, there's so many good stories.
It really is what makes MotoGP great right now, isn't it? I mean, there's so many different scenarios and things that could play out. And like you said, that, Marc Marquez winning, how can that be a big story? Well, it could be a big story because he hasn't won there very much. And there's a lot of guys, like you say, I think that are wanting to go out on a high note for 18 and, roll that over into the offseason and get some motivation for 19. I mean, what about Rossi and the Yamaha resurgence? I think that they've shown a lot of potential the last two rounds. And, you're always talking about Rossi hasn't won, and he hasn't won this year, but he led the last one a long way. And what's his record like there? What's his record like at Valencia?
It's not good. I mean, MotoGP sends out a stat sheet, Jay, and, saying things like, look, this is the 20th visit that MotoGP's come to Valencia. The last 17 years, it's finished the season at Valencia. So, it's something people can rely on. But there's a lot of names on this list when you look at MotoGP, from Dani Pedrosa to Jorge Lorenzo, Casey Stoner's names on the list. But, you don't see a lot about Valentino Rossi at this racetrack. And he even alluded to it in his post-race comments last week, how heading into Valencia has not traditionally been a great track for him or for Yamaha. I mean, Yamaha's won on 5 occasions, in 15 and 16 with Jorge, and the last couple wins they've had. And Zarco, I think, didn't he come across the line second, I think, last year, Jay?
He did. And it's also known for some surprise winners. I don't think anybody really expected Pedrosa to win last year. And what about, I'll be even thinking about when Bayless won there. I mean, it definitely can throw up some surprises and can throw up some almost wild cards, if you will. I haven't even looked to see what the weather's supposed to do in Spain over the weekend. I probably should have checked that. But
there's some milestones too, Jason, that we can look at for Valencia, more than just a race win. I mean, the championship's wrapped up. Of course, we talked about it last week when you're talking about Valentino Rossi is third in that points championship, but he's in a battle with 2 other riders for second in the championship. So, I mean, it's not just bragging rights. I mean, these are racers, right? I have to imagine that there's championship bonuses on the line.
Yep, top 3, be it the being able to go to the awards banquet Sunday night. It's an exhausting time for all those guys because they literally do their whole banquet, and then they come out testing, and some of them are probably a little drowsy from the night before, maybe. But for the Monday test, but you're exactly right. There's a big battle for second right now in that championship between Dovi and Rossi and Vinales. So I think that when you look at that, those guys definitely have something to race for. And I'm also looking at the Suzukis. I mean, they've been on the podium the last 4 rounds. Solid team. Both Iannone and Rins have shown a lot of pace. Might be a really good track for the Suzuki. It wouldn't surprise me. I think that what we're starting to see at MotoGP races as well as before, when there were a lot of tracks that you could see big groups of guys drafting and redrafting, we're seeing big groups of guys at technical racetracks now, like Valencia. So you could get 5-6 guys in that lead battle this weekend, and I think that the Suzukis will show well there as well.
You mentioned Suzuki, Jay. Trivia for you, okay? Little trivia. Yeah. When was the last time Suzuki, in the MotoGP era, okay? So obviously 4 strokes. When was the last time Suzuki won a race?
I
think it's the only time Suzuki won a race.
It would have to be maybe Chris Vermeulen. I can't say for sure, but I remember Vermeulen went on the Suzuki in the rain, I believe, in Le Mans. And since then...
This is a trick question, dude. I tricked you.
Did you trick me?
Suzuki has not won at Valencia.
Valencia. I'm sorry. I thought you meant overall.
No. In Valencia. Yeah.
Oh,
in Valencia. So their best result has been a 3rd place finish in 2007 with
Capirossi.
John Hopkins.
Yeah.
Yep. How about that? The Rins was the top Suzuki last year. He finished 4th. So, Rins obviously can get his boogie on at Valencia. And I think maybe if you pick a dark horse, I'm going with Rins to win it all.
I am too. And I think Rins or Iannone. Honestly, I have written in my notes as Iannone being a dark horse there for me. I feel like he's got a chip on his shoulder. He's got something to prove. I think that the whole dynamic of that team, which has been so good, is getting broke up. And we'll talk about that a little bit in the show. But I think Rins even had pace at Sepang until he made the small mistake that he did following Marquez and tipping over there on the first lap. But I think there's a lot of people out with a point to prove. I think Vinales, we talked about it already with the top 3, or top 2 kind of in sight there. I mean, one of these guys in 2nd, 3rd, and 4th isn't going on stage on Sunday night. So it's just a matter, and there is some pride and some ego behind that. But the one guy we haven't talked about, and I haven't seen too much on just yet, we'll probably know a little bit more tomorrow, but don't you think Lorenzo's going to want to go out on a win? I mean, don't you think that's just kind of a way of him being able to kind of stick it to everybody else on this Ducati one last time? If his injury's gotten any better at all, you can't count him out at this track either. He's
100%.
Done so well here,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And him, that would be something spectacular coming off of injury, but Lorenzo definitely wants to go out on a high note. And speaking of Lorenzo, there's going to be some history being made, Jason, or possibly at Valencia, because if I'm looking at total podium finishes for career, Marc Marquez right now is at 77, 7th overall, right behind Eddie Lawson, who has 78. So if Marc Marquez can, somehow stand on the podium, which we all know that that's an easy possibility for him, then he would tie Eddie Lawson for 6th overall on podiums. Who has the most podium finishes in the Premier class? Who do you think?
See, you keep on giving me these questions, right? You got to give them to me before the podcast starts so I can look them up, so I don't look like an idiot to all these people out here that might be listening.
Dude, that's the only time I get you looking like an idiot, dude. Come on. You don't look like an idiot. This one's an easy one. All right.
Rossi would seem like Rossi would seem like the easy choice. But you look back and you look at like Agostini and all those guys way back in the day. I mean, even before my time, I know that they were on the podium a lot. But Rossi for sure seems like the easiest one.
Yeah, Rossi, 196 podiums. Crazy, right? Then Lorenzo, 114. Dani Pedrosa, 112. McDowan, Agostini is 5th with 88. Then Eddie Lawson, Marquez, Stoner, Rainey, and Biaggi. So you're talking about, technically in this one, you have 4 riders still in the mix for podiums. But one more thing before we move on to the next topic is going to be actual race starts. The number 1 race starts in the Premier class, 322. Actually, it's just Grand Prix appearances altogether. 322 from Rossi, Alex Barros at 245, our boy Nicky Hayden at 218. Dani Pedrosa right now is tied with Loris Capirossi at he's one behind Loris at 216. So if Danny gets to start this race, which we expect he will, barring any disaster, then he'll be tied 4th all-time, Loris Capirossi, one behind Nicky Hayden. So at the moment, Nicky stays in 3rd place for all-time starts, 218 for Nick. That shows how old you are, isn't it? That Nicky started 218 Grand Prix races, and he only did it in one class.
So amazing. Yeah, I mean, that is truly remarkable on Nicky's side. The name you just mentioned there that I love, the guy in 2nd, Alex Barros, the guy that, the Brazilian, he was still racing superbikes up to like a year ago. He might even still be doing it, but he was bringing up young talent and he was still racing superbike. And I remember I was a huge fan of Alex Barros back in the
Me
day.
too.
To think that he is second all time on the start list, boy, that says a lot because he's been out of
Hey,
for a
Alex, if
long
you're
time.
listening to the podcast, give Richard Stamboli a call at Attack. Let's see if he's
Yeah, he's looking for riders, maybe, possibly, right? Might as well throw his name in the hat as well. Everybody else has been there.
Well, we're talking about retired riders, Jason, which means that we've got to transition into what's happening with Dani Pedrosa. Dani Pedrosa he was a spectacular motorcycle rider. I just want to go through some stats. Are you shocked? Are you shocked that I want to go through
I know
some
you
stats?
do your homework, which is great. Let's do it.
So here's the deal. He started in 2001 in the 125 class, back when it was, 125s, now Moto 3 for you young people. 8 wins in that class and a world title. He then transitioned into 250s. He won 15 races and 2 world titles. And then that was 2004 and then to 2004 and 5. In 2006, he came to MotoGP, as we know, as Nicky's teammate. Overall in his career, Jason, 31 wins, 40 40 second place finishes, 41 third place finishes for 112 podiums. In his entire career, 54 wins, 153 podium, 3 world titles, 49 pole positions, 64 fastest laps.
Wow.
And by the way, his 3 world titles, a lot of people don't remember this. They were back to back to back. So in 03, he won the 125.
Real quick.
Yeah.
Let me ask you a question on that. Like, do you feel like Dani Pedrosa might be one of the most underrated guys or most least talked about guys? I mean, you just think of the stats that you just threw out there. 3-time world champion. Just in the smaller classes, 23 wins between 125 and 250 back then. But I mean, 31 wins in MotoGP. That's incredible when you really think about it, and how long he's been around, how long he stayed on the same team. I mean, he's never changed. He's always been with the Repsol Honda team. But don't you feel like Dani Pedrosa just doesn't quite get talked about enough, even with all the accomplishments that he's had?
No, and I think, especially here in the U.S., I think for some fans that don't really want to talk about him was, something from back in 2006 with Nick. But I don't know why Dani doesn't get spoken about more, like why he wasn't. Remember when there was aliens, right? When there was the alien riders, when you had those guys and stuff, and Pedrosa was always there.
Always. He was right there with Stoner and Rossi and
by the way, Jason,
Lorenzo, he was there.
2001, when he came into the 125cc class, he didn't have a win. But since 2002 up until 2018, he's won at least one race every single year.
Incredible.
And we know that some of those years he was out for quite a bit of time with injury, right?
I think that's part of the problem, though, Greg. I think everybody looked at Dani as a guy that, he could be there, but when he falls down, he's so brittle, he gets hurt and he gets forgotten about. I remember, I think it was just even 4 years ago, he was leading the championship. He was up front every weekend. I mean, I think there was a lot of us that really thought that was the year he was going to win the championship. I believe it was either 15, maybe 14, 16, somewhere in that area. And what blew me away was I remember him crashing in Japan at Motegi. I remember him crashing, breaking his collarbone, and that literally ended his championship hope. But he had a lead in the series. I think that Dani would probably go down as the one guy that it's probably the saddest to know that he never won a MotoGP championship, knowing that he's led the championship, 31 wins. I mean, 112 podiums overall. When you sit there and you think about that stuff, and that's just in MotoGP, the 112 podiums. Mm-hmm. When you sit there and you think about it, it is. I think when you look back, it is kind of sad that he's never won that championship, and he's led it in that. But you bring up the Nicky situation. I think that there are a lot of us Americans that remember that. I remember that was the first time I'd ever picked up my computer and was ready to throw it through a window when I watched that race from Portugal.
Before you go further, though, recap what we're talking about for those that don't know.
Yeah, well, Nicky was leading. Basically, Nicky was in the hunt for championship there in Portugal, and this is where Tony Elias became kind of an American hero over here because he beat Rossi to the line that day after Pedrosa cleaned Nicky out on, what was it, Craig? Probably like the 8th or 9th lap. And it was probably the most emotional I'd ever seen Nicky, as far as in the gravel, just completely pissed off, not happy. Obviously, you can imagine being taken out by your teammate. And I think that there was a number of people, especially Americans, that weren't that stoked with Pedrosa. And
that's a mild way to put it.
It's a great way of putting it, because there's other words I could use for sure. But I think that what it did is it turned him into such a villain, especially here in America, that I think that people wrote him off, didn't really think of Dani Pedrosa. You didn't want to talk about him because of what he had done to Nicky.
Well, when he came here after that, Jason, he would get booed. I mean, they would introduce him or whatever, and fans would boo him in the years following. But you know some insight as to how Nicky dealt with the situation, don't you?
Nicky was amazing. You and I talked on our little pre-race before that. What was it, like a week, Greg? He just wrote it off. He was like, I got to go on to the next race, and whatever happens, happens. And they went to Valencia, obviously, and we know what happened at Valencia with Nicky winning and Rossi having a tip over in that race. And it was almost like Nicky just brushed it off. He was over it. The nation, or the MotoGP nation that we know in America, as far as people that followed it, I don't know if a lot of them ever got over it. I think Dani was always looked at as a villain. Everybody felt very lucky, I guess, that Nicky was still able to go on and win the championship, because had he not done that, it might have been hard for Pedrosa to come back here and race some of the MotoGP races that he did.
Yeah.
Because of that. And it was one of those situations that I remember being up at 5:00 in the morning and having this rage in my office. I was just, my friend Nate was with me. He was staying at my house at the time, and we were both losing our mind at that. We just couldn't even believe it. And then we watched the rest of the race, and of course you see Tony barely beat. That was the race also. I think Kenny Jr. finished third. Kenny didn't think. I think he thought he was going to the checker flag, and it was he was one lap early, right?
In that race too, Pedrosa pulled over for Nick. Like, he helped him win that championship in Valencia. Yeah. So
correct.
The bottom line is that Pedrosa knocks Nicky off the bike. Nicky forgives him, but race fans still hate him in the United States because of that, without them really understanding that Nick let that go. And at the end of the day, Nicky was over the moon to accomplish his childhood dream of being 2006 world champion.
But I'll say this for sure, because we are a forgiving nation. I believe when you go to the rounds now, especially over the last 3 or 4 years, there's a lot of people rooting for Dani Pedrosa. Everybody was rooting for Dani Pedrosa, and I think that, again, that goes along with the fact that Nicky did go on and win that championship. So kind of our American hero, if you will, got his championship, and so Dani was a little bit forgiven. And I think in the twilight of his career, he's just still been so competitive. And I think that with Marquez being his teammate, I think he took over the villain role a little bit in certain regards, and people started rooting for Dani. So I hope he has a great weekend at Valencia. I would love nothing better than to see him put it on the podium that last time. Like he just won there a year ago, so it'd be great to see that.
Yeah. And there's a lot to talk about Dani Pedrosa, but one of the things, of course, is what will he bring to KTM? And that's a question that'll be answered, over the next, I guess, year or so, because he's going to transition on to testing.
Yeah, well, it goes right into our talk about the testing on Monday, Greg. It's, you think about the schedule that these guys have, and I know people sit there at home and they think, well, they're scheduled. They get to ride motorcycles. When you ride motorcycles at the level that they ride all the time pushing, and you really look at the miles that get calculated over the course of a year, and how much risk they're putting in, you cannot go testing at 90%. You have to go testing nowadays with all these manufacturers being as close as they are. You have to go push the whole time. Now, we talked about Dani being on that Honda his entire life. What do you think is going to be his mindset when he strolls down to the KTM and rides that bike for the first time? I'm not sure if that's happening on Monday. I don't know. But what do you think his mindset's going to be to go jump on a bike as a test rider for KTM on a bike he's never ridden, with a team he's never been on? And it's going to look weird not seeing Repsol on the side of Dani's bike.
It's going to be very weird. I mean, the only connection is that the manager for the KTM team was his crew chief for many, many years. So they're familiar with each other. But, one of the rubs that Dani Pedrosa's had in talking about testing is that he wasn't a very good bike developer. And I guess, when testing happens on Monday, if Dani rolls out on that bike, we're going to start getting some answers as to just how good he is later on, next season when those developments start to happen. But you talk about the test. So here we have Valencia. You have everybody who is at their last couple days at the current job that they have, and then they roll into new contracts, some of which stay put, like the Valentino Rossi's of the world. Some go on to brand new teams. Don't you have a rundown? Like,
yeah. Like looking at it, you got Zarco, Siren, and Miguel Oliveira on the KTM. They're going to be joining Paul Espargaro. So essentially, you got 3 riders that are jumping on the MotoGP bike for the first time, on the KTM MotoGP bike for the first time. And just to recap real quick, Greg, I think I think KTM hired Pedrosa more for the knowledge of where he's come from, the respect that he has as far as being able to get up to pace and all that kind of thing. I think if, because he's still got to push. It goes back to what I said earlier. These guys push all the time. Danny's still willing to push, I believe, and hopefully help the other three riders, meaning Zarco, Siren, and Oliveira, get up to speed on that KTM, as we know Paul Espargaro knows it. How about for Ducati? We got Petrucci just moving over now to the factory team and Bagnaia coming in. I think that there's a lot of hype around Bagnaia going into this test. It'll be interesting to see when he rolls out on Monday how quickly he gets up to speed, being a MotoGP rookie. Of course, the big one, Lorenzo from Ducati over to Honda. I think a lot of us are going to be watching that. The two that I really think for me will be an interesting dynamic, especially if you see them running around on the racetrack together, will be Andrea Iannone kind of getting pushed aside from Suzuki earlier in the year, jumping on that Aprilia. It can go two ways for him. I think it's either going to be a depressing season, or he might want to stick it to Suzuki so bad that maybe between him and Aleix, they can get that bike working. But Joan Mir, kind of limping his way, if you will, right into MotoGP on this Suzuki on a bike that is already very competitive. There's going to be no excuses for him, Greg. I think that he's going to be coming in, yes, as a rookie. I think that from my standpoint, this bike is moving forward. It's gotten very fast, even with its race results recently. I think it's going to be a lot of pressure on Mir to get up to speed rather quickly, even though he's a rookie.
Do you think Suzuki's going to be set back again? Because remember, the Suzuki was coming along with Vinales. I mean, it really was. Yep. And then he left, and then they staggered again, and now they're starting to get back to the point where they were with Vinales. Do you think that they're going to stagger again, especially with Mir coming in? We don't know what he's like as a tester, and obviously big bike experience is a huge question mark.
Well, the thing that sucks for me is when you look at Vinales, he won races for Suzuki. Why Suzuki maybe didn't open the checkbook up a little bit more? I think that a lot of that also has to do with the rider. Vinales felt like he could go over and get on the Yamaha. Maybe there was a better opportunity for him there to go jump on that Yamaha, and it proved to be successful for him, obviously race wins and things. But the Suzuki was coming around. I remember him winning at Silverstone and some places where people thought the Suzuki was underpowered and this and that. But he was doing really well. The development on the Suzuki's been pretty good over the last 2 or 3 years. And I think that when they brought Iannone in from Ducati, I think that helped increase Suzuki's chances even more with some of the stuff that he brought in. He's still a fairly young guy, very motivated, rides very hard. And then Rins has come in after all this, jumped on a MotoGP bike for his first time. Suzuki makes a big commitment to him and has done really well. Now, they get rid of a guy like Iannone, to me, which is a question mark. For the first 3 rounds of the year this year, he was really not anywhere to be seen. So I understand the fact that they did that. But this had to be in the works way before 3 rounds in. I mean, it had to be, hadn't it? I mean, Mir was already ready to go. And what we thought we would get from Mir this year, Greg, we just didn't really see. And now you got 2 very young guys on this Suzuki, and you got Gintoli, who test rides for Suzuki. I would definitely hope that the development doesn't go backwards. And I think there's 2 factories right now that there is potential of that, meaning Ducati and Suzuki. Hopefully they can keep pushing forward.
Now that's the bell to move on to the next topic. But before we do that, I really want to ask you this question.
Yeah.
Since you're, a world champ and all that crap.
Thank you.
Mindset on Sunday, knowing that you are testing on, for 2019 on Monday, if you're jumping teams, do you think it affects anyone's mindset on Sunday about, not pushing as hard, getting hurt? I mean, everybody could say do a good job until your last minute and everything, but do you think it affects anyone in how they approach Sunday because they're going to a new contract and get to test their new bike on Monday?
Well, I think that if you look at the riders we just spoke of, you look at like a Petrucci, he's already on a Ducati. If he's struggling this weekend, I don't think it's going to be hard for him to sit there and roll around 7th, 8th, 9th place and go, okay, I'm on the factory bike tomorrow. Again, another guy who I'm a fan of, actually. I really like Petrucci, but I feel like he's kind of limped into it as well this year. Getting on that factory bike, I think, is definitely a right place, right time move. And I think that there is something to be said about that. You're going into this last round. You want to do as well as you can, but there's going to come a point in the race where if you feel like you're either not competitive or you're running around by yourself, it's easy to put it on cruise control and think to yourself, well, I'm going to my new team tomorrow and kind of check it out, check out of the race. So I think every rider's a little bit different. I think the really motivated guys are, especially if they're happy with their team now, even though they're moving on. You might get a Zarco, for instance, this weekend, who's done tremendous for that Tech 3 team on the Yamaha. He's going with them again next year, but he might want to just put in one more solid ride on that bike and then know that he's opening the garage door Monday morning with the same team, but on a different brand. So I think your question is very valid, Greg. I think it'll just be a matter of seeing who's motivated.
Well, we know that the test is going to happen, and more than likely, MotoGP is going to have that, and Jason and I will watch it. So we'll definitely cover the test from Valencia and all the things that we see next week. But let's transition now to MotoAmerica, where, it's interesting, Jason. A press release came out Monday announcing that MotoAmerica Supersport National Champ JD Beach would race full-time in the American Flat Track Series on the Estenson Racing Yamaha. So I got on a call with JD and I talked to him about that and some other things. But before we get into that, what JD had to say, well, JD has a stutter and he wanted me to run these clips as they came out of his mouth. And he's hoping to inspire some young folks that may have a stutter and to let them know that, hey, just go for it. Speak your mind. Don't let, something small like a stutter get in your way of success. So with that, here's JD answering the question about American flat track racing and more.
Yeah, it's really cool. I'm gonna be riding for the Estenson racing team, and I'll be riding a Yamaha MT-07, and it's gonna be really cool and a lot of fun. But I'm definitely gonna have to learn quick because this will be the first time that I'm committed to doing the whole year. So yeah, it's a new experience, but it should be good.
Now, what about the level of equipment that you're going to be racing in flat track? That, Yamaha motor, is it a full blown kind of factory bike? Is it something that your team's putting together?
Yeah, so it's kind of a mix a little bit. We're getting bikes that the team has bought from Keith McCarty. So those are the bikes that Keith has been working on for the last 3 years now. I think it's been. So we will have those bikes, and then also the team has the bikes that I spent some time on, and also Jake Johnson rode this year too. So we're gonna have a bunch of bikes to ride, and I think it'll be good because with dirt track, I mean, it it is all dirt, but I mean all the tracks are different, the dirt's different, so it'll be good to have multiple bikes, so we'll have something that have at least one bike that will work at the tracks.
I have not had a chance to compare the Moto America schedule to the flat track schedule for 2019. I'm sure you have. Where does this leave your Moto America career? Does flat track dominate it? Is there room for Moto America races for next year?
Yeah, so it's really cool, and I'm really lucky because Tim Essenson, who owns a team, he knows how much I love flat track, but he knows that I've got dreams and goals in road racing too. So it's gonna be a lot of racing next year, and my America deal won't be announced until Friday. So there's still more news to break, but it's gonna be a lot of racing, and right now, uh, two of the American flat track rounds will be on the same weekend as Moto America, but I will be making the road races.
So, what do you think about that, Jason? About what those three comments you just heard?
Well, first off, we can't lose JD Beach in our series. Moto America right now is on the upswing. To lose our champion would be devastating. And I think that, I think we both know, I think everybody kind of knows that some of the rumors about him going to Ridiculous Racing possibly, and I don't know that for fact, but I think that that's kind of where, kind of what we're hearing.
Yeah, we'll find that
Greg,
out Friday for sure.
Yeah, I think we're going to find out Friday. I think that the really neat thing here is that somebody like Tim Estenson picks up JD Beach to go dirt tracking, because you brought up this thing about his stutter earlier on, and I'll tell you something I found out about JD is the guy is such an endearing guy. First off, he rides the wheels off any motorcycle he gets on. I mean, he goes to Spain last year, wins the Super Prestigio against all these guys, and I know he's won a couple other flat tracks here last year as well. I believe the last race in Pomona. And regardless, the kid rides hard. His work ethic is amazing. He trains hard. Somebody like Tim Estenson that puts him on this bike, and I don't know Tim, and I've definitely started to follow flat track a lot closer. But he realizes the value in having somebody like JD Beach on his team. The stutter that you talked about earlier on, I told JD when I saw him at Jersey that I was going to do a little talk with him or a little interview with him. And I told him, I said, I think the stutters, I think you put it on. I think you do it for fun. I think it's an endearing thing that you have. You got all these girls that probably think it's cute and all this stuff. He is wide open to that. And it's inspiring to me to see that he wants to inspire other kids. All around, there's not a bad word that you can say about JD Beach. And the opportunities he gets given, both in dirt track and in road racing, it's a total package deal that you get with him. So congratulations to him. I know and I hope that they put the best bike that they can underneath him for dirt track. I know he can win there. I also know that he can come back to our paddock and win anytime he wants, and we'll do so next year. But I'm excited for him. I think it's, great. Back in the day when I was a kid, the Grand National Championship, it was road racing and dirt track. That's how you became Grand National Champion. And I don't know of anybody else in the last, I can't think of how many years. I mean, I'd really have to go back and think about it, who has raced somewhat of a full schedule in dirt track and a full schedule in road racing. The kid's going to be on a bike all year long, and as long as he stays healthy, he'll be successful in both series.
Dude, that was Nicky Hayden's dream, remember? I mean, Nicky would have loved to have done that, but he couldn't because of the schedule and the way racing was back then. And by the way, JD knows about that. Now, I continued. It was a really great conversation I had with JD, and the next question I had for him is, now, Jason, that we know that JD is out of contention for the factory ride that was left vacant by Roger Hayden's retirement. So I asked him how close he thought he was to getting that Yoshimura Superbike ride.
It's weird because I mean, not that I was a shoe-in, but I mean, I thought I was gonna get that ride. I mean, it's. I mean, I basically. I mean, I live in the same town as Roger. He knows how hard I work and how bad I was wanting to get that ride, and I talked to his crew a lot, and I mean, I really thought I was gonna get it, but I think everything happens for a reason. That reason I don't really know, but yeah, I mean it's I'm bummed about it, but I mean I've moved past it, and I have some new goals now, and I think it's kind of made me want it a little bit, not the Yosh ride, but made me want to chase my dreams a little bit more.
Tough one, huh, Jason? To know that your dream is just dangling right there in front of you and you think you have an in. And of course, a lot of people think, and I still do, that he deserves that ride.
Greg, I'm sitting here and I'm pondering all the thoughts and ideas that could be going through anybody's mind of why JD Beach wouldn't be a finalist on that, why he isn't testing that motorbike. And I'll tell you what it is. There's a couple things. Number one, when Tony started struggling last year, the only people that you could really look at were the guys that were able to run with Cameron. And Josh Herrin did show that. Josh Herrin showed that he is capable of running with Cameron Beaubier. So when you see your kind of A guy struggling a little bit, you might think outside the box. I think that if Tony had been winning more last year, let's just say that he didn't go through that little midseason slump, I don't know how they couldn't choose JD Beach to kind of be the next kind of young guy that could come along and groom him for that spot. That said, that would be a discussion you and I would have to have with Suzuki and with Don and all those guys at Yosh. JD Beach seemed like the absolute best choice, in my opinion, and he still does. JD Beach has won championships. He's shown loyalty to a manufacturer.
He's got Superbike experience, right? Yes.
Superbike experience, work ethic. You cannot tell me that if you plug JD Beach into a team as experienced as Yoshimura, that the kid's not going to go out there and win. I don't even have a question or a doubt on that. And people are going to sit there and go, well, compare him to Josh Herrin. I'm not comparing him to anybody. I'm just talking about JD only. The other thing is when you hear him say he's moved past it, dirt track right now, Greg, has a lot of money in it. That's all we keep hearing, isn't it? That these guys are able to go and actually make a living racing a motorcycle. They're on a major network. The races are covered very well on TV. The fans, it's a little bit like Supercross. It's a one-night program. Everybody goes to one spot. The stands fill up. When you look at what flat track has become, I think with getting Indian involved as well, Indians come into the sport and really rejuvenated things. I think JD's able to accept the Yosh thing a little bit, Greg, because I think that he's probably going to make pretty decent money going and doing dirt tracking. And then he still gets to road race, whether that's on the side, full time, we'll find out. But the thing is, he's still going to get to road race, and he's going to be able to make a living as a motorcycle racer. And that's not something that a lot of people can say right now. So I am disappointed that he didn't get the Yosh ride, but it's great to hear him say that he's moved past it. And now he's got new goals and new thoughts in his sights.
Yeah, so the way the schedule will work for him is MotoAmerica will be his focus. There's 2 conflicts with flat track, so he'll miss those 2, which is important as we go along in this one. But, the next question that I had for JD kind of tags onto what you were just saying. He's raced both series, MotoAmerica and flat track. So I asked him, what do you think about the state of MotoAmerica?
Yeah, I mean, I like to think that it is doing good, but it needs to improve too. I mean, and I don't solely think that's because Moto America's not doing a good job or because teams aren't wanting to come in or whatever. I mean, I think there's a little bit that needs to improve on all things, but I think Moto America is trying to improve that and even trying to cut costs for teams. I mean, because we're gonna have 4 rounds that are only 2 days this year, and so hopefully that will help some teams. And yeah, I mean, it's a weird time, and people aren't buying more motorcycles like they used to. And I mean, they're still getting bought, but different types of bikes are getting bought. So things are just in a constant state of change, kind of. And I think it's just something that we need to just get in front of a little bit. I mean, because from the guys that I've talked to that have been in the pits for a long time, I mean, the AMA Pro back in the day, I mean, they kind of went through a time back when they were first starting that I mean, there wasn't a lot of teams and stuff, and then stuff changed, and they started getting more teams and more brands backing it. So yeah, I mean, I think it's something that can improve, and I think there's a good team of guys that are working hard on it.
Yeah, so Jason, I think JD brings up a good point, which is really what he's trying to say is that it seems to be cyclical in terms of racing, that it peaks, it drops, it peaks, it drops. And so JD keeps the optimism alive, saying that, look, this paddock has been through it before when it grew and then it kind of peaked out. I would say probably 2008, 2007, 2008. And now it's kind of rebuilding again. Would you say that's accurate?
I agree with him. I think MotoAmerica has given everybody a platform, a great platform, to come back in and get involved. They've tried to drive some of the costs down. Everybody goes, yeah, it's expensive. Well, racing's expensive. We know it's expensive. It's never going to be free. So on that regard, it would be great if we could see more teams getting involved, but we need manufacturer support. We need manufacturers to get involved. And I know that everything's deeming on bike sales and things. And we talk about all this all the time, Greg. But MotoAmerica has given the manufacturers what they want as far as a stabilized rules package. They get the schedule out early. They do a lot of things that could make it very easy for these manufacturers to plan and get involved. And even if it's just supporting some small teams to get started. And that's the growth that I think JD wishes he could see more of. And yeah, we've gone through peaks and valleys. I mean, when you and I were involved in it, starting in the early 90s, it was thriving. I mean, literally from 92 really through 2006 is when I stopped, and you could still make a living. And like I said, I think MotoAmerica's done a good job to put a platform in front of people. Now we just need people to jump on board.
And getting back to racing with JD, think about what he's in for next season. I asked him, what it was to switch from a road race bike to a dirt track bike and back. And I led him into it with, it must be difficult, huh?
It is a little bit, and it's not like it's difficult, but it's more like at the break habits, and it's more like it's more when I come from dirt track back to road racing, just because I do start trying to slide the bike and stuff more, but it's something that I've it's weird because I worked on that a lot this year without knowing that I was going to be doing both next year, but it was something that because I have a dirt track at my house, so it's something that I ride a lot, and so it was a big deal for me to work on that and be able to switch back and forth. But it was weird because this year in dirt track, after the Moto America year was over, I did the last 2 miles, and that was the first mile I had done since 2013, and that definitely took a few laps to get used to it again, because I mean, it wasn't the speed, but it was going that fast on dirt, and then how narrow the track was, and the track was rough, and so it definitely took me a few laps to get into it again.
Yeah, so Jason, back in the day when you were racing, there were racers that would go Superbike and 600, and that was tough. But can you imagine going from one discipline to the next,
No, I can't. And when I watch that racing, the thing about dirt track is it's evolved a little, but it hasn't evolved like our sport, not even close. I sit there and I watch and I see how close these guys run to the walls or fences and all that stuff. And to me, it makes me cringe a little bit. I think dirt track is one of the gnarliest things that there could be because the racing is so close. I talked about it when we were talking about the Moto3 race at Australia. I said, probably the only guys that I could, that in America that can really relate to that kind of close racing is in dirt track. If you go and you watch a mile, you're on the edge of your seat the whole time. I mean, you could be 6th, 7th, 8th and draft up to 3rd and 4th and just keep working your way forward. I think that will be something that he'll get used to, but JD's a racer. And I think that now with him there, I think the Estenson team is going to do it, whatever they can to continue to improve the bike, make it as good as they can with Yamaha support. And I don't think it's going to take much for him to jump right in it. But one thing he did say, I mean, Greg, the hardest thing for me about those miles is when he says the track is narrow and it's rough. I mean, it's the ability to be able to move around and get out on the cushion. The last one I watched from the Meadowlands was the last race I watched from the Meadowlands was so great because guys are making lines. That's the one neat thing about dirt track is you, instead of following, you start trying to make new lines, try running in different spots and that kind of thing. The ability to really think outside the box in that racing is incredible. It's like a little bit like motocross. Those guys are never hitting the same line twice. It doesn't seem like in a lap because of the track conditions and how they change. So I am definitely a flat track fan, and I'll be watching it so much closer going into 2019.
All right, so with JD racing 2 championships in one season, I wanted to know, jokingly, of course, that if he was to win both championships, would he get 5-time Grand National Champion and current number 1 plate Jared Mees to say that he is the best racer of all time? And this was his response.
If there's some crazy way I can pull that off, or if there's a crazy way that I can pull off winning both, then then yeah, I'll get Jared to say that. But I mean that's gonna be a lot of work. I mean for one, Jared it is amazing. But then I mean there's 10 15 guys that are fast and American flat track. So I mean, even if I do miss 2 races, I mean it's going to be hard to win that title unless there's some guys breaking or crashing out or something.
So I called Jared Mees, played him JD's answer, and this is what Mees had to say about that.
Man, I could say this. If JD can go out there and win both championships right out of the box, I will actually say at the end of the year that JD is the greatest motorcycle racer going right now.
What do you think he's up against, though, for 2019, switching back and forth? I mean, obviously, you put all of your energy into flat track. You've won it, so many times already. But what do you think he's really up against?
Well, I mean, I think he's up against, for one, a motorcycle that doesn't have a whole lot of development involved. He's jumped on the Yamaha and got some podiums. And although I think the Yamaha could be a great power plant and flat track, it's still a little bit underdeveloped. And I think first we need to get the bike developed, and we're going to be going to some tracks that JD never raced before. So, I mean, obviously he's got a little bit of a uphill battle with some of the things, but I think JD is a phenomenal motorcycle rider. I mean, for him to be able to go out there and road race and win a championship and then come to flat track at the end of like 2017 and jump on the podium and, show up a few years ago on a Kawasaki and podium at Springfield Mile. I mean, he's got the talent, he's got the speed, and I know that he can be a huge threat, but we all know that with coming winning races and championships comes good teams and good bikes and development and things like that. So I'm really excited for JD to make his comeback into flat track, and I think it's awesome for the sport. And one thing that I feel like flat track lacks is the participation on the rider side of things, taking racing serious, the training, the diet, the mental side of things. We lack in that department as what I would like to call athletes. And JD is an athlete. He takes racing seriously. He takes the diet strict. He trains. He puts a lot of effort into his program is what I'm getting at, as I feel I do as well, and a few select guys. But right now, we lack in the department of our participation in the seriousness of the sport, taking this as a job, taking this as a business. And that's where JD is going to excel at in the sport.
So that being said by Jared Mees, Jason, I know that Jared looks at JD Beach and says, this guy's on my radar to win races and to give him a run race to race. Not necessarily in the championship because JD's not going to, be able to do 2 of them, but definitely on a race by race basis.
Well, first off, how well spoken is Jared Mees, number one, because you could really tell his answers were very well thought out. And it goes back to the Yamaha again, how well the Estenson crew can develop that bike and make it better. Because I know Indian, when they came into it, they had 3 riders and they were testing all the time, Greg. They were going to the tracks they were going to be racing at and testing all the time. And I know that because I know a couple guys on the team that were going with them and getting those bikes prepared. So it's a matter of getting that bike up to speed. The new tracks, I think the problem that JD is going to have with the new tracks is if you've ever been to a dirt track, the lack of practice time that you actually get. I mean, it is like they time their practice sessions like, I don't know exactly what the minutes are, but they time their practice sessions and you get like 4 or 5 laps of practice and then it's line up for heats and things like that. It all happens very quick. So it's not like he's going to get to go, unless they go testing, it's not like he's going to get to go to these new tracks and get a ton of laps on them before he gets to see him. And the last thing I think that Jared Mees brings up that is very well known in our circles is dirt track has always been known as the, guys drinking beer in between heats and smoking cigarettes, and that's kind of how the 70s was. And
like the Outlaw Racing Series.
Yeah, the Outlaw Racing Series, exactly. And I think that he hits the nail on the head. It goes back to what we talked about. His work ethic, JD's work ethic, is insanely good, just like Jared Mees. And that's why Mees is as successful as he is. Because when you look at what Jared Mees does, he looks like an athlete. He talks like an athlete. He does all the right things. And in the sense that he's not faking his way through it. He's putting hard work into doing what he's doing. And JD will be that same exact guy. It's just a matter of equipment and being able to get used to some of these other challenges that he's going to have to come up with throughout the course of the year. We know he's going to win races.
Yeah, JD Beach is going to be a great story for 2019 because he's going to be bouncing back and forth, something that someone hasn't done in years. And no matter what you do, it's going to be a great story, and I look forward to following it. But let's go ahead and park MotoAmerica, Jason, and move on to World Superbike. And the reason we want to move on to World Superbike is because literally today they actually got to test. So we want to talk a little bit about that test. Not everyone was at the test. First of all, it was in Motorland Aragon, so it was at Aragon, and some of the key teams were there. Kawasaki Racing Team with Johnny Ray and Leon Haslam, who's now on that team. The Paddy Yamaha Official World Superbike team was there with Lowe's and Vandermark, as well as the new Ducati with Chaz Davies by himself. Jason will explain that in a second. And the Barney Racing Team with Michael Rubin Rinaldi was there as well. So, Jason, you got to touch base with World Superbike a little bit and find out what the test was like today. What do you think?
Yeah, I think just looking at the times and, you brought the lap times. What was Ray, like 1 point something off or 1 point something ahead of everybody? It's 49 something to 51.1, I think it was.
Yeah, the unofficial lap time was a 1:49.668 for Johnny Ray. The next closest rider was Lowe's at a 1:51.1. That's 1.5 difference right there.
It's crazy. Yeah, so you can, and at the EICMA show, Ray was talking about how he's not really in race fit form and all this stuff. I don't know what that means. The guy's obviously very fit.
It's vacation. He's like, I took a couple days off, so it just means he didn't train every single day,
I had an ice cream cone, so he's way off the program probably. But no, the thing is that Johnny Ray obviously hasn't lost any motivation. You got to kind of wonder sometimes if you think that you hear what people say, you hear what people think that you're doing to the series. How do you lose? Do you stay motivated? I think it fuels his fire. I think it just kind of aggravates him. So he's going to work harder. The Kawasaki is got some updates for 19.
Yeah, that's true. So that's, I think, the key thing, right?
They're testing that, right?
Yeah, they're testing that. There's some updates. So you're talking about an evolution motorcycle. I think the story is Chaz Davies. Chaz Davies was third quickest at a 1:51.18. So he was 300ths less than that, actually about 200ths of a second slower than Alex Lowe's was. So here you have a brand new Ducati. All right. So you have the Panigale V4R that they rolled out of the truck. I mean, it's been tested and stuff like that, but this is Chaz's first go at it. And he was nearly faster than Alex Lowe's was. If you're the rest of the paddock, you got to be looking around going, uh-oh.
If you're the rest of the paddock other than Jonathan Ray, I don't think he cares.
Well, yeah.
I think he just, I don't think he cares. He's just, that to me, Ducati rolling out a new bike fuels his fire. Like that's where he's going to find his motivation. It's like he's thinking to himself, all right, these guys have tried to develop a new bike to come and beat me, and we're not letting that happen. That's what's going to be his motivation. When you talk about Alex Lowe's and Vandermark on the Yamaha team, I don't know how much new stuff that Yamaha is going to have. I don't think that they're really got too much. I think that there might be some bits and stuff. I think that there's a couple components that they are definitely testing at this test. That said, the lap time still 1.5 off. I know it was very cold there. Just by looking at some of the photos, you could tell it looked cold in Aragon. And I do have a couple little feelers out of there, so we might be able to get a little bit more information for our show next week. But when you look at it, Greg, it looks like the same guy is still there now. Leon Haslam hits his first go really on that factory bike, and he was in the 51s, I believe. Also, I think you said he was fourth quickest.
Haslam fifth quickest, at a 1:51.4. So just a couple tenths off of of Chaz and stuff. But if you look at his time, it's almost 2 seconds adrift of his teammate.
Yeah. So, but I don't think there's any worry there. He's getting used to maybe some new guys, new teams. First day. I mean, look, at the end of the day, it's the first day. So, when you talk about Chaz, I think when Bautista gets done with his MotoGP stuff after this weekend in Valencia, another guy that it's his last race in MotoGP is Bautista's. A lot like Pedrosa's. Very hard to get back to MotoGP, so we don't want to just come out and say it's Bautista's last MotoGP ride ever in case he gets a wild card somewhere down the line. But you got to think that his main focus now is going to be to switch over to that World Superbike spec Ducati, and he's probably kept a little bit of a close eye on what went down there today to see kind of what his future is going to be like. It's going to be a big boost in Bautista's confidence, I think, knowing that he's going to a full factory Ducati team and helping in the development of that bike with Chaz. I think that there's a lot of things that trickle down from MotoGP to the World Superbikes and so on. I think that the Ducati today actually had wings on it. The World Superbike Ducati had wings on it that they said they're not like adjustable. So you can see some of that technology kind of rolling down into World Superbike. And Ducati's trying to do everything they can right now to go after that championship in World Superbike and beat the Kawasaki.
Yeah, I think, a good shakedown test for Ducati for sure. And I think that's really going to be the story is the limitations. The one storyline that Ducati needs to change in World Superbike is a storyline that they have with, I think, most manufacturers, except the Kawasaki in World Superbike, meaning thinking of MotoGP, is the Ducati works great here at this track, but it doesn't work great over here at this racetrack. And that's something I think that they're really trying to work on with this new bike. It's not just throw a V4 motor in it and then have a crap ton of horsepower that you're going to be able to twist the grip. You got to get it to the ground, but you got to get the motorcycle to work with their two riders that are going to be racing this thing. And I think that's really part of the mindset, the shift in this one, because I don't know, Jay, I mean, you've seen all the World Superbike races. Is there any track where the Kawasaki is kind of, you know what I mean? It's kind of like, where
if it is, they figure it out pretty quick. I mean, Pierre Riba and that whole crew that works for Johnny Ray, they figure it out pretty fast. So, I mean, he won like eight or 10 races. He won 9, didn't he, Greg? Because they didn't do the last round. 9 races in a row, and everybody's talking about how boring the championship is. I look at it on the other way. I think it's a pleasure watching him ride. And the thing I remember, Greg, 2 years ago when they were having some real struggles electronic-wise, Johnny definitely struggled. I remember Sachsenring. Oh, no, not Sachsenring. What's the one in the German round in World Superbike? I can't believe I can't remember the name of it right now. But he struggled there quite a bit, and it was mostly because remember he was having a hard time downshifting the bike, and he just had a lot of issues. But they sorted all that out last year, and it seems to me too that sometimes people come out of the gate really hard, like they did with the Ducatis this last year at Phillip Island with Melandri winning. But Johnny Ray just does what he does. He just gets those points when they do struggle, and then all of a sudden he just goes on these dominant runs. He's going to be tough to deny a 5th championship.
Oh, that's a new segment we're running. That means that it's time for Quick Shift. And Jason, in Quick Shift, what we're going to do is I'm going to ask you some questions here. We're going to have about, let's say, 30 seconds or so to just kind of give a comment if you want. Are you ready to start our new segment?
Let's do it.
Okay, so let's see. I'm going to rattle some questions off here. The first topic, Jason, Casey Stoner as a test rider. He leaves Ducati. Is that a good thing or a bad thing for Ducati and Stoner?
I think it's a bad thing for Ducati. I think that they're in a bad spot right now with Pedrucci and Dovi. Where's the development going to come from? Pirro will still be there. But, having a guy like Stoner who it sounds a little bit bitter, like he didn't feel like they were taking his advice enough. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens with Ducati, and it might be interesting to see if Stoner goes and signs with somebody else.
All right, Josh Herrin testing today for the Yoshimura Suzuki team. You don't have any data, but what are your thoughts in general?
Thoughts in general, great for Josh. Go up there, do the best you can, impress the team. We know that he's a more than capable rider. I think that a test for Josh Herrin, I don't really know why you would test him. He's already got the riding capabilities. If you're looking at him to sign him, you can go test him. Maybe it's a test to see how he gets along with the crew, how he gets along with the team. And he's been on Yamahas for so long. Let's see how he does on the Suzuki.
All right. Cam Peterson going from the Genuine Broaster Chicken Honda team to Omega Yamaha. Thoughts on that?
Lifeline for Cam Peterson for me. I think that last year he struggled a little bit on the Honda. We haven't seen anybody do great on the Honda anyways. I think Cam as a rider, has a lot of talent. He has a lot of control, but he's got to learn to taper things a little bit. When things aren't quite right, let's get a result. Let's build on it. Let's get some info for your team so that they can move you forward. I know you want to win. I know you want to do well, but let's keep things under control and go into 2019 with maybe a little bit different perspective on how your season can run.
All right, next topic is going to be Richard Stamboli. Attack Performance reaches out to a couple World Superbike riders. Who would you like to see come to the States?
Wow, who would I like to see? I just think that he's got to get somebody on there that's quality, that is capable of winning. We're hearing thoughts about Eugene Laverty maybe getting signed with a couple different teams in World Superbike right now. He'd be a good choice. There's about 4 or 5 guys that he could put on that list right now that I think could come here and do really well. So I'm just glad that he's still thinking outside the box to stay in MotoAmerica. We need Richard Stamboli in our series.
And the final topic is going to be Moto E. So that's like MotoGP bikes that are run on batteries, Jason. They're set for 5 MotoGP races for 2019. Do you like it or not?
Asked me 6 months ago. No, I was bored with it. Don't even want to know. Look at the rider lineups that we have coming through. Wow, people are taking it serious. I'm intrigued. I think it'll be something that'll be interesting to watch. I know it's something that you and I are going to talk about in some later shows, but you got Sete Gibernau coming out of retirement, and you got Maria Herrera, who I really, really rate. I think she's tremendous. She could do really well in that class. She's not afraid of the boys. I'm intrigued by the Moto E, and it'll be interesting to watch.
All right, so there you go. That is our new quick shift segment. Jason, thanks for answering all that questions. That's going to bring this Greg's Garage pod with Jason and Greg to a close. Any final thoughts from you, JP?
I think it was a great show. I think there's a lot of intrigue with the things that we talked about today. I love hearing from JD. I think it's great that you got a hold of Jared Mees too. I know you and I have talked a long time about how much we like dirt track. It's definitely something that we want to include in our shows. I'm going to be watching it closely. And for all those of you who have been sending comments to us and notes, really appreciate all the great feedback that we've gotten, and people really seem to be enjoying it. So thank you for everybody, and thanks for doing all the hard work, G-Dub.
No problem, man. It's my pleasure. I love doing this thing. And don't forget, everyone, that we are available on iTunes. You can go check us out on Google Play. We're also now available on Spotify, and we'll be reaching out more. You can also check it out on YouTube. I try to edit a little video, so in case you just want to, listen to us on YouTube, you can do that. And of course, always on Podbean. My thanks to Jason, of course, for joining me on this one, JD Beach and Jared Mees for their time. Next week, we're going to be talking about the MotoGP test. We'll be talking about JD Beach's MotoAmerica plans and a whole lot more. So thank you so much for joining us here on the Greg's Garage Pod with Jason and Greg.